Overlord Volume 8 Side 2, 1/2, A Day in Nazarick Translators, Rock Golem Editing, Skywood, Namarax, Tainted Dreams, Nigel, Pharaoh, Noirx, Zach Tan, Sifa V6 Special thanks to Anon 514 Nazarick Time. A droplet of water gathered at the end of the golden faucet, and it slowly swelled, until at last it was pulled down by gravity and splashed onto the floor of the bathroom. There were several bathing facilities within the great underground tomb of Nazarick, and this was one of them. Someone soaked within a stone bathtub that was large enough to accommodate several people at once. Blue water dripped off a slippery white body. This blue color was not a literary illusion, but an actual blue color, as though it had been produced through a deliberate application of dye. A blue-colored liquid licked at the porcelain-like body, starting from its feet. Its slippery body defied the force of gravity and crawled upwards, unlike the water which flowed in all directions. Phew! The bathroom was very eco-friendly, and the thus words which had unconsciously slipped out were unexpectedly loud within its confines. Perhaps it was ashamed by its own voice, but a slender hand suddenly emerged from the blue liquid. The expected sound of water droplets and ripples in the water's surface were nowhere to be found. That was because this liquid was abnormally viscous. The upraised hand caressed a face which many had praised for its beauty. The person in question sighed softly, then let itself fall backwards into the liquid. However, that person's body did not sink into the water. Rather, the blue liquid slowly caught that person's slender frame. The softness resembled a waterbed. The liquid was clearly sapient. That point was promptly proven in the next moment. The blue liquid began to writhe, extruding several tentacles that were the thickness of 1 or 2 fingers each. These tentacles began to move, as though to embrace that person. Naturally, the same thing was happening within the blue liquid as well. It touched the face, the chest, the belly, the arms, the legs as well as the loins. After seizing its prey, the liquid began squirming, as though satisfied. In truth, it was a sapphire slime, a high-level slime variant. The sapphire slime began moving the long, thin tentacles which wrapped the body. The tentacles infiltrated the tiny crevices of the groin. Ah! The cry rang out once more. While it was louder than before, that person did not think about lowering their voice this time, simply focused on the sensations of the slime working around and writhing within their body. The sound of someone talking to themselves echoed through the bathroom. This feels great. It's too good for words. The person within the bathtub Ains muttered to himself as he took a slime bath. He scooped up a handful of slime and poured it onto his head. The slime, which had been hard at work cleaning out the crevices of his pelvis, seemed to sense where its master wanted it to clean next. Ains felt the slime crawling around on his head. Phew, this is paradise. Ains' undead body was composed entirely of bones. He had no metabolism, so his body would not stink or become dirty from bodily wastes. However, this did not mean he did not need to bathe. After all, dust and soot still accumulated on him, and sometimes he would be splashed by his enemy's blood. In the end, he would still get dirty. Besides, as a Japanese person, he felt very uncomfortable about not bathing. I could only take steam baths over there, in my original world. So once I knew I could bathe here, I wanted to soak my entire body into the tub. Perhaps bathing is a deeply ingrained practice for Japanese people. He went through the motions of exhaling while he sank further into the slime. The slippery sensation received and accepted his body. It would not feel strange if he treated it as a viscous liquid. Normal bathing is very troublesome. Ains lowered his head to look at the most troublesome part of his body. The rows of his ribs came into view. Cleaning each rib one by one was very troublesome. Ains recalled his struggle from when he had done it before, and sighed despite the fact that he did not need to breathe. That was not the only troublesome thing. His spine was the same way. The protrusions snagged his towel, and he could not clean them off easily in one quick go. He had to slowly clean each individual vertebra. At the beginning, Ains had taken great care in bathing himself. However, Ains soon began to find it tiresome, despite his supposed mental resilience. It took at least half an hour to bathe, and he could not help but think, are you kidding me? After that, he decided to soak into soapy water and turn around inside it like a washing machine. That was a pretty good idea. The problem was that he did not feel clean. If he did not scrub himself, it did not feel like he had gotten all the dirt off him. Following that, he used a handled brush to scrub himself. That was quite effective. Granted, the soap and foam went everywhere, but it was not as though Ains was the one cleaning it anyway. Cleaning was the maid's job, and they were delighted at the chance to show their stuff. It was truly a win-win situation. However, even this good idea was flawed. That flaw was not knowing if he had really scrubbed himself clean. It was just like getting a cavity despite carefully brushing one's teeth. Though he thought he had scrubbed himself from head to toe, he was still worried that he had missed scrubbing some part of himself. In the end, Ains hit on this solution, which was to let a slime engulf him. This technique, as I thought, it's truly revolutionary and unique. A perfect technique that can't be faulted, he muttered to himself as he looked at the blue slime crawling all over himself. Ains nodded happily, satisfied by the method he had invented for easy bathing. For all he knew, this might have been the best thing he had thought up since he came to this world. Well done me. As Ains praised himself once more, he looked to the slime, which industriously oozed all over him. How cute. Monsters like these were extremely vicious. They could dissolve their enemies with acid, and they were strong enough to bend iron bars with ease. Yet to Ains, they were his bathhouse attendants, who helped get him clean. To some extent, they felt like pets. Still, while slime baths are good, I'd like to take a regular bath sometime. There were all sorts of facilities on the 9th floor of Nazarick. One of them was a large bath. It was a complex of various bathing sub-facilities themed after a spa resort. Maybe I'll go bathe there and see what it's like. That said, bathing by himself was too boring. That being the case, all right. I'll get the guardians to go with me. It'd be good if there's a time when everyone's free. Ains smiled at his good idea. 7:14 Nazarick time. There were two types of maids in Nazarick. One group was the combat maids, as represented by Yuri Alpha, and the other was the regular maids who had no combat abilities. The latter were homunculi, with a combined racial and job level of 1, and they were responsible for various jobs in the 10th and 9th floor of Nazarick. In particular, cleaning the various Supreme Beings' rooms was a task of utmost importance to them. One of these regular maids, known as 6th, moved rapidly along the corridor, for she was in a rush. This was a simple maid technique, not a special skill or anything, and it carried her to the cafeteria. There was only one reason to go to the cafeteria at this time. When she arrived, almost all her colleagues had already gathered for breakfast and started eating. The cafeteria was predominantly white in color, with sparse decoration. The echo of the girls' cheerful chatter echoed off the walls like ripples in water. It would not have been much of a problem if there was only one person, but since there were many people speaking, their voices blended into one incomprehensible noise. On top of that, the sound of clinking tableware added to the din. The maids in the cafeteria could be separated into 4 main groups. The first 3 groups were sorted according to their creators. There were 41 regular maids in total, but it was not because each Supreme Being had created their own maid. Rather, the regular maids were created by the triumvirate of White Brim, Hero, and Coup de Grace. Strictly speaking, the last group was not a proper group by itself. It was composed of those maids who had detached themselves from the first 3 groups in order to eat in silence, to eat while reading, or to talk to maids who had been made by other Supreme Beings. 6th, who had arrived late at the cafeteria, belonged to the last group. She waved to the maids made by the same Supreme Being as herself. They were her sisters, in a sense, and then headed to her usual place. Good morning, have you eaten? Good morning. And yes, we've already eaten. Breakfast was so good, so creamy and fluffy and tasty, the person delivering that deadpan reply was called Foire. She was bad at lying, but lied anyway. She had short hair and her maid's skirt was similarly shortened to match her energetic appearance. Contrasting her was Lumiere, who had a neat look about her. There was a mysterious gleam in her blonde hair, which sparkled like there were stars in it. Good morning. Four, since you shouldn't need seconds, you can wait here for us. I haven't had breakfast yet, so I'm going to get some. Come, sixth, let's go. Lumiere stood, trailed closely by Four, who was frantically saying, I was just kidding. Really, after concluding their usual dialogue, the three of them went over to the self-service buffet counter. Naturally, they had the maid called Increment, who was quietly reading a book beside them, watch over their seats. The first thing Sixth took at the buffet bar was a serving of crispy bacon. As a member of the faction which believed that soft bacon is the devil, she always went for that first. Next, she helped herself to some soup. Of the three flavors today, soup of the day, corn and onion, she selected the last. After that were sausages, French fries and danishes. Her other plate was piled high with onion salad, almost to the point of spilling. Finally, Sixth placed an order with a masked manservant. I'll have triple cheese, double onions, and extra mushrooms. The manservant nodded, and began making the omelette. Sixth returned to her seat to put down her dishes, and then poured herself a glass of milk before returning to where the manservant was waiting with her freshly prepared omelette. Thank you very much. The flawless omelette was perfectly prepared, without a single singe mark on it, and she returned to her place just as her friends did. Then, let's eat. Let's eat, let's eat. The three of them had their breakfast in silence. Slowly but steadily, they transferred the mountains of food, far in excess of what a normal girl would consume, from their plates into their bellies. It was because they all possessed increased appetites as a racial penalty. Because of that, even though they were among friends, they never talked while eating. Four chewed while her cheeks were bulging with food, Lumiere ate elegantly, but her fork moved at a ferocious speed, and Sixth ate at a rate in between the two. Soon, their plates had emptied with startling swiftness, and the three of them downed their glasses after that. Hoo! The three of them exhaled, the scent of milk heavy on their breath, and then looked at each other. Seconds? Sounds good, but let's take a break first. I approve, feeling kinda stuffed now, anyway. Say, Sixth, isn't it your turn to serve Ains Sama today? You seem more determined than usual today. Four smiled mischievously, and so did Sixth. Lucky you, how much longer will it be until it's my turn? Lumiere counted off the days on her fingers. The rooms of Nazaryk's supreme rulers were massive in scale, so much so that one person would need half a day or more to clean one of them carefully. While the maids had the raw numbers to clean them all on a daily basis, even with Albedo's spare room factored in, that would require a lot of people to work all day without any rest. However, this was not a problem to the maids. They had been created by the rulers of the great underground tomb of Nazaryk, the guild Ains Ulgaun. It was only fitting that they should work their fingers to the bone for them, because it was an act of venerating their gods. And then, these fanatical workers had been told to stop by the godlike being, Ains Ulgaun. Ains knew the hardships of working under unethical companies, and he could not bear to let these girls, who were like his friends' daughters, suffer like that. He had told them, don't clean the unused rooms so frequently, and then you will work and rest ion shifts. Thus, the regular maids of Nazaryk were organized into two shifts, the day shift and the night shift. The former had 30 people and the latter had 10, while the one remaining person got the day off. After calculating the working days for the maids, the announcement that they would have a break every 41 days was met with complaints. It was not that there were too few days off, but the opposite. They requested that the day off be cancelled. Ultimately, working for the Supreme Beings was the reason for their existence. Telling them that they did not have to work damaged their sense of self-worth, and made them feel like they were no longer needed. As such, the maids decided to discuss the matter with Ains. They said, please don't take our jobs, we want to do it all day and night, and so on. Ains shot the suggestion down on the spot. The concept of fatigue existed in Yggdrasil, and while it could be easily remedied with magic, there was no guarantee that fatigue would be healed as easily in this world. Even with magic, he was worried that it would steadily degrade their ability to function, like a cogwheel losing its teeth. Yet, the maids adamantly refused to back down. Faced with their tears, Ains gave in and proposed a new type of work for them. They would have to personally serve Ains. That task entailed staying by Ains' side to attend to his every need and whim, and the maids would take turns filling that role. This offer was as tempting as sugar sprinkled with honey to the maids, whose greatest joy in life was to serve the supreme beings. They accepted the suggestion without a second thought, along with the order that you need to take care of yourselves and rest well the day before, so you can serve with all your strength when it's your turn. We need our nutrients so we can work hard, you know. Plus, depending on the circumstances, you might need to skip a meal too. Of course, when you serve Ains-sama, your brain needs all the nutrients it can get. I want something sweet, the three girls nodded in unison. Incidentally, all the maids carried several meals worth of candy and other such treats on them. They would snack on them whenever they had free time, while serving Ains. However, be it fortunate or not, they simply could not find that free time. As such, the morning meal was very important to them. Have you heard? They say they're going to cook using ingredients from the outside world and have a food tasting. The other two gasped at Sixth's statement. I expected as much, Sixth thought. Few of the maids thought well of the outside world, the world that lay beyond Nazarick. Some of them felt that the outside world was inferior to Nazarick, but most of them were afraid of it, because the floor right above their home, the 8th floor, had once been invaded by people from the outside. Will all the maids be attending the tasting? Or will only a few of us be allowed to go? Just as Sixth was about to answer Four's question, the atmosphere in the cafeteria changed. The air itself seemed to heat up. As the newcomer came into the maid's sight, they squealed in delight. Shizu-chan. It's Shizu-chan. The person who had just entered the cafeteria was one of the Pleiades, CZ. The battle maids were like idols to the regular maids, and CZ was the most popular of them all. There were frequent struggles to sit next to her. Ah, the penguin's here too. CZ held a penguin under her arm, and a worried-looking manservant was trailing behind her. It was the assistant butler, Eclair. He flapped his wings with all his strength, but there was no way he could escape with the strength of a level 1 birdman. His desperate struggles quickly lost their vigor as the maids looked on. In the end, the penguin ran out of strength and went limp, like a real stuffed doll. Shizu-chan. Over here, over here. Come eat with us. No, come over here. Shizu-chan, just throw that butler away. Over there would be fine. Send that useless bird to the head chef, at least he'll contribute to Nazarick that way. There was a marked difference in the reception that the assistant butler and CZ received from the maids, but that could not be helped. He was disliked because he loudly proclaimed that he wanted to take over Nazarick, despite being a mere assistant butler. Even if he had been created that way by the supreme beings, his frequent announcements of those wild words made him quite unbearable. CZ peered through the commotion around her, as though she was searching for someone. The adorable way in which she did so, like she were a child who did not know where to sit, made many of the maids' hearts beat faster. Even that bird looks cute when Shizu-chan holds him, how strange. I want a Shizu-chan hug pillow. Albedo-sama seems to know how to make those, I wonder if she'll teach me. Albedo-sama is very kind, I'm sure she'll agree. Why don't you try asking her next time? The sound of a book closing with an audible thud came from the next table over, and when Sixth turned to look, her eyes met Increment's. This place is getting noisy, so I'm going back. Since you're attending to Ains-sama today, you should probably finish breakfast quickly and head over to him. Any mistakes you make will reflect on all of us. Having said her piece, Increment turned and left without waiting for a reply. As she watched her fellow maid leave, Sixth took out her pocket watch. Fortunately, she still had some time. After freshening up, she should be just in time. All right, I'll go grab some more stuff to eat, while everyone's focused on Shizu-chan. Four and Lumiere nodded at Sixth's idea. Oh, that's a nice idea, Sue. The sudden answer from the side made the three maids gasp. Lulupus Regina-san. With hands clasped over her lurching heart, Sixth turned to face the source of the voice. There had been nobody there just a moment ago, but Lupus Regina had appeared out of nowhere, while everyone was distracted by Shizu and looking away. She sat sideways on a chair with her legs up on the table, and even had a share of her own food. Please don't scare us like that, honestly. Four was still clinging tightly to Lumiere, her eyebrows pressed into a / shape. My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. Lumiere barely paid any attention to Four, who was clinging to her. She spoke quietly, like she had been scared out of her wits. The three of them directed reproachful voices at Lupus Regina, yet they were actually just a little happy inside. That was because Lupus Regina was the only one of the battle maids who treated them like friends, although her actions were hard to predict. She spent her time moving between the different maid groups, so being approached by her was a sign of good fortune. The best proof was how some of the others were looking at Sixth and her group with envious eyes. Nishishi, seems my experiments in the village didn't go to waste. You three gave me some pretty amusing reactions. The way Lupus Regina supported her face with her arm on the table, while having an evil grin on her face, made her look a little like a cat out of the storybooks. Although her smile was nothing but mischievous, it was still surprisingly charming. Sixth watched the battle maid smile for a while, utterly fascinated by her. The other two seemed to feel the same way, but the first to recover was Four. The village? Four tilted her head, which made her short bob hair brush against Lumiere's face. Lumiere resisted the urge to sneeze and shoved Four away, and then she rearranged herself so she was looking Lupus Regina straight in the face. Lupus Regina-san, you work outside, right? Yup, in the human village, Sue. Humans, huh? It must be tough. Lumiere looked at Lupus Regina with sympathetic eyes. Nah, it's nothing like that. Since Ain-sama ordered it, it's worth doing. Although, I have to say, it's kind of boring. How should I put this? It would be so much more fun to squish them beneath my feet. Sixth had no particular opinion about that statement. Humans and their villages and whatnot were unimportant to her. Whether they prospered or were destroyed, the only thing that mattered was if they were useful to Nazarick. Come to think of it, Ain-sama said that village was very valuable, but I don't see it. Sue, given Ain-sama's personality, he must have said so because he pitied the miserable little humans there. No, Ain-sama's like a hurricane of death. I'm sure he's just waiting for the right moment to kill them all, right? What are you saying? Don't you know Ain-sama is a genius? All this must be part of his plan. I can't pretend I didn't hear that. Isn't Ain-sama's power the best part of him, Sue? The four beautiful girls stared at each other, none of them willing to back down. Ain-sama is a beautiful, compassionate person. Ain-sama is death, come for this world. Ain-sama is an incomparable hero. Oh, looks like everyone has a different impression of Ain-sama. Then, let's have a competition. We'll see who can pick out the most suitable title for Ain-sama. In an instant, everyone went silent. Lupus Regina was wearing her usual smile, but she had a certain understanding of her liege's qualities, and was unwilling to admit defeat. However, Sixth and her two friends felt the same way. The regular maids were weak beings, but their respect and adoration of their master was no less than that of anyone else's. Then, the three of you may start off, Sue. In that case, Lumiere was the first to speak. Then, as I said earlier, I wish to praise Ain-sama's beauty. So how about a figure of beautiful porcelain, shining and flawless, the gentle Lord of Mercy? Next was Four. Well, if we're going to praise Ain-sama, then we should praise his awesome power, right? As a ruler of death, what could be more fitting than Memento Mori? The third was Sixth. Ain-sama was the one who coordinated the supreme beings, so his management skills would be excellent. So he is a wise king. Although everyone's names fitted their master well, in the end they all thought that their own choices was the best. Lupus Regina coughed gently as Sixth, Four and Lumiere looked at her. With a proud look on her face, she said, in the end, we shall call him the absolutely strongest and most. There you are. The source of the calm voice was CZ. The assistant butler éclair she had been holding under her arm had vanished to parts unknown. Stop using invisibility all the time. Saws it's a habit, Sue, and you started eating. A sun-hot anger burned under CZ's emotionless face. Sixth had the feeling that she should not be here any longer. I have to go to Ainsama. Then, I'll go too. I'll send you along, Sixth, and the others quietly vacated their seats, though they did feel a little bad ignoring Lupus Regina's pleading looks toward them. In the end, they did not manage to get seconds. It was a bit of a shame, but she had to pull herself together now. Sixth paid no heed to the danger in the air behind them. Instead, she lightly slapped her cheeks to focus herself. Her face had the stern, brave expression of a soldier heading off to a war, but her footsteps were light and fast. 9:20 Nazarick time. This was the 6th floor of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. The undead which roamed the tomb were nowhere in sight, but magical beasts, such as the controlled by aura, defended this location in place of pop monsters. This area, known as the most expansive in the great underground tomb of Nazarick, was largely covered by dense forest, to the point where it could be described as a sea of trees. That said, the past members of the guild Ains Olgown were very meticulous about details. They certainly would not paint this area green, and be done with it. There was a coliseum here, a giant tree, traces of a village which had been swallowed up by the jungle, a lake, a venomous cave, a twisted grove, a mangrove forest and a bottomless swamp, all of which added variety to the sea of trees. Recently, they had even built a small village to receive new residents. In the center of this sea of trees was a big lake that said, it was still smaller than the underground lake area on the 4th floor, which was surrounded not by forest, but by grassland. While the grassland and lake were fairly small, when compared to the entirety of the 6th floor, it was still large enough for their purposes. There, the first of them was the floor guardian Aura. She rode easily atop a gigantic wolf with jet black fur, and just a glance was enough to tell that she was an old hand at this. However, that was only to be expected. After all, when she patrolled this large area, she preferred to do so while riding the magical beasts under her dominion, although running would have been easy enough, given her preternatural physical abilities. There were 2 other people. One of them was the guardian overseer, Albedo. She was not wearing her usual, beautiful white dress, but the black full-plate armor which she donned for combat. However, she was not carrying her weapon or shield. The other was Shaltir. She looked the same as always, and her eyes had a strange look which was less of interest than enjoyment. Then, let's begin. Come, my mount. The skill Albedo used was called Summon Mount. A magical beast slowly emerged out of nowhere, as black as the armor she wore. This beast had a white mane and tail, and it resembled a horse. It was clad in a suit of full-plate barding, and it was fitted with reins and a saddle. It was slightly smaller than a horse. However, its presence was far more oppressive than that of an ordinary horse. The most defining difference could be found on its head. There, one would find 2 horns that protruded straight outwards. The first response to the magical beast which had suddenly appeared came from Aura, who knew the most about such creatures. Oh. It's not like an ordinary bicorn. Its horns are strong, and it looks really beefy too. Fufu, Albedo laughed. That's right. This bicorn has been strengthened by my abilities into a war bicorn lord. Well, it's actually a level 100 bicorn. Can it fly? No, it can't. It's fundamentally the same as a regular bicorn. It doesn't have any special abilities, just improved stamina, strength and dexterity.